Hello again. The concept of this lesson is in a previous video, and so this video is only going to go through the examples. We've learned that triangles have three sides. They have three sides and three angles, or six parts, and you have to be given three parts in order to solve a triangle. In example one, we have been given the length of a side, which is 9.5, and we have been given an angle of 24 degrees. Now, it may look like we've only been given two parts, but it's a right triangle, so the third part of a right triangle is always going to be the right angle. So to start out with, we need to find the measure of that third angle. We know that the sum of the internal angles is 180. We can already subtract off 90. So the value of B is going to be 90 degrees minus 24 degrees, which turns out to be 66 degrees. So one part down, two to go. To find the other parts, we're going to have to bring the trig functions into play. And so let's start out with the cosine of 24 degrees, because that's going to equal the adjacent over the hypotenuse. We rework that. H times the cosine of 24 degrees equals 9.5. And then finally, H itself equals 9.5 divided by the cosine of 24 degrees. Now you have to make sure that your calculator is in degree mode in order to do this. So here's how we do it. We have we put in 9.5 and divided by, and then the cosine is that button that says COS, cosine of 24 degrees. There's nothing else to it. Press the button and we get 10.399. I'm following the convention that Saxon seems to follow of 2 decimal places. So we're going to call that 10.40. And we have found H. We found our hypotenuse. Now, I prefer to use the things that are given in the problem rather than the things I've calculated. And so now I'm going to use the sine of 24 degrees to find y, because the sine of 24 degrees is going to be y divided by, no, I can't do it. I can't do it that way. I have to use 10.40. I meant to use tangent, but since I wrote it that way, I'm just going to follow through. So 10.40 times the sine of 24 degrees is going to give us y. In the same way, we just type in 10.4. We don't have to type in the extra 0. And then we're going to multiply that by the sine of 24 degrees. Press R. It's EXE on this calculator instead of an equals. And we get 4.23. So y equals 4.23. And H is 10.40. And B is 66 degrees. So we have solved this triangle. Now bear in mind, when I draw this, I'm drawing any old right triangle. I'm not trying to draw it to scale. All right, let's do problem number 2, example number 2. In this example, we've been given the hypotenuse this time, and we've got that right angle, and we've been given this angle of 35 degrees. So the first thing that we want to do is find B. B is going to equal 90 minus 35. I'm starting with 90 because I'm already subtracting that off of 180. And that's going to give us 55 degrees for B. So 1 down, 2 to go. So the next thing we could try is to use the sine of 35 degrees. That's going to equal the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So 14 times the sine of 35 degrees is going to equal x. And I've already shown you how to do that on the calculator. So I'm just going to fill in the results here. So x equals 8.03. Remember, if you're not getting these values when you use your calculator, it's because you're set in radians and you have to find out how to be set in degrees. I can teach you how to do that. To find m, we can use the cosine of 35 degrees because that's going to equal the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And so 14 times the cosine of 35 degrees is going to give us m. And when we plug that in, we're going to get an m of 11.47. And so we have now solved. We've gotten a value for m. We've got a value for x. And we got a value for b. We have solved this triangle. All 6 parts of that triangle have been given a value. Now, the third one is a little bit more interesting. The third one, in the third one, we are given the hypotenuse, and we're given a side. And we're given this. We're always given that when it's a right triangle. Now, remember, in the future, it's not going to be a right triangle. We're going to learn to solve for any old triangle. Okay, so we can start with the sine of A to find out what it is. The sine of A is going to equal x divided by 7, which is not that helpful. You see, let's try the cosine of A. That's going to be equal to 6 divided by 7. And so that doesn't look that helpful, but what we want is the cosine to the -1 of 6 divided by 7, which is going to give us A. Ooh, isn't that cool? And I'm going to show you that on the calculator. So the cosine to the -1 is in yellow above the cosine button. So you press the yellow shift button and then you press cosine, and look, cosine to the -1 appears. I'm going to use parentheses just to make sure that the calculator understands what I'm doing, and put in 6 divided by 7, close parentheses. And when I press execute, it's going to give me the value of that angle, which is 31 degrees exactly. So A equals 31.00 degrees, to follow the convention of 2 decimal places for Saxon. We can do the same thing with B. Look at the sine of B. The sine of B is the opposite, the 6 divided by 7. Isn't that interesting? The sine of one of the acute angles is equal to the cosine of the other acute angle. Okay, so what we want is the sine to the -1 of 6 divided by 7, and that's going to give us B. So in the same way, the sine to the -1 is in yellow above the sine. So we press shift and sine, and there it is. I'm going to use my pens, 6 divided by 7, and press my exe key and find out that it's 58.997. Well, if we bring that 7 into play, we're going to get 59.00. So B is 59.00 degrees. And if we add 31 and 59, we certainly get 90 degrees. So we're good for that. So we found A and we found B. We have one more part to find. So I'm going to go back to this one, the sine of A, because now we have a value for A. So now I know that the sine of 31 degrees equals x divided by 7. So x equals 7 times the sine of 31 degrees. And you already know how to do that on your calculator. So I'm just going to give you the value that you should get, 3.61. Put it there so that we can see that we solved this triangle. We got a value for x. We got a value for b. and we got a value for A. So all the 6 parts of this right triangle have been given a value, and that's called solving a triangle. All righty, see you next time.